You're listening to the Jordan Lee Podcast. This episode is going to focus on brand strategy, what it is, why it matters, why it's important, and so we'll just dive in right now. So brand strategy is what it is not. It's not your logo, it's not your website, it's not your business card, it's not the tactical expressions of your brand into the world. Really, it's about encompassing kind of the internal and external pieces of your brand, and building a roadmap for long-term investments into the brand, right? And so the whole brand is the strategy combined with the expression. And so we kind of want to look at what the strategy entails and what it's built upon. It's kind of a scaffolding approach to the foundations of your brand. And then from there, using that to properly express your brand into the world. So at kind of the base foundational level of your brand, you kind of have this brand substance, this brand foundation, and it really takes on the pieces of the brand that are kind of your purpose, your vision, your mission, and your values. And so we can kind of dive in a little bit into that, but I'll probably do a podcast where I focus on each one of those individually and what they are, probably a half hour to an hour long. But really, those four kind of tenets encompass kind of who you are, what you stand for, what you believe, why you believe it, what you're doing now, what your commitments are today, and what is that long-term vision that you're trying to achieve. And so once those things are kind of defined, you really have kind of the foundation of your brand as a business, right, internally. And from there, you can take those pieces and use them to kind of build your positioning. And so positioning is really kind of, where do you sit in the marketplace? Where do you sit in the industry? Where do you sit in the world? And how do you position yourself properly? And so, I think for me, a lot of the times, my goal is really to unpack those foundational things through my discovery process, through talking with clients, doing a lot of collaborative work, looking at kind of, turning over all the pieces of the puzzle there and really understanding those foundational things. And then in the positioning side, it's really about looking at who the audience is, who the competitors are, and what is your differentiator. And so a lot of people don't really, they kind of have an idea, my audience or my customer is X and my competitors are, 1, 2, and 3. And I kind of know what makes me different, but not really. And so really in this positioning strategy, there's a deep dive into really understanding the audience first. So we want to take a look at who they are, what are the demographics, what are the psychographics, what's their income, what is their home life like, what is their career, what are their hopes, their dreams, their fears, and looking at that from a very holistic perspective. So we would define some user personas or customer personas, and usually we would do 3 to 5, built on ideal customers that maybe a client currently has, but also who they aspire to attract, right? Like maybe they're a startup, they don't have any customers, or maybe they're looking to grow their business. So really doing kind of this deep research into personas of different audience and customers really starts to see, well, what is their lifestyle like? What other brands do they have in their life? What is the journey and the story that your customer is on? And once you kind of look at that, figuring out how your brand can weave its way into their lives And I think this is a really important piece of brand strategy and branding. That a lot of times people think, if I build an amazing website, or if I have a logo, or if I have a social media, if we build it, they will come. And it's not, like you want to execute at a high level, at a professional level, but being empathetic and humble in your brand and your brand strategy means that you're going to put your customer first. You're going to put the audience first, and you're going to recognize your brand to you as a business leader, as an owner. It's 24/7. It takes up all of your bandwidth, all of your time, all of your money, all of your effort. But for people that are looking to buy your product or service, it might be something that they want to think 10 or 20 minutes about, right? It might be something that they rely on and they just want it to work. Or, maybe it's a high-end luxury product or service and they expect, a certain level of involvement and customer service from you. There's expectations there. So really, it's about understanding where you fit into the lives of your customers without the expectation that just because you have the company and run the brand, they're going to automatically be loyal because you're putting 24/7 into it. It's more about setting expectations and then delivering on that, but also delighting the customer and going above and beyond their expectations. So, you can invest a ton of money into marketing and advertising and billboards and, wrapping vehicles or going door to door and all of those efforts. But if it doesn't fit into the lives of your customers and they don't have a reason to care, they're probably not going to. So I think that's just a really important piece that when you think about your brand and your business and you start to express it into the world, to really put the customer first is kind of what I'm trying to say. And it's a pinnacle point in your positioning and your strategy and the overall brand strategy. The next area is, looking at your competitors, kind of seeing what they're doing, who their audience is, who they're targeting, what is their marketing, their ads, their brand, and being aware of what they're doing and trying to stay away from, the copycat remix of a remix of a remix type of approach. And maybe there's some brands and some industries that work in that way that, depends on the product or service. But I think if you really want to build an impactful brand that's memorable and people remember you and the story that you're telling and, trying to build something for long term, I think staying away from the copycat remix approach to your competitors is a good idea, right? So, there are industries off the top of my head that I think of that things feel very similar. I would say the big box home improvement stores, they all kind of feel the same as far as the customer experience, the price points, the advertising, the marketing, the location, the services, right? Another example would be, home services. So for landscaping, lawn, home cleaning services is another example of things kind of feel the same. So, those examples, I guess, is what I'm trying to say is there's opportunity in whatever space that you're in to figure out what your competitors are doing and then finding the things that differentiate yourself, which is kind of the last piece. So if we look at the audience and we look at competitors and we do deep dive and we do research and evaluate this, I run models and different algorithms and spreadsheets and research and data. Things, scraping the internet for information, pulling kind of resources and looking at a lot of data from different viewpoints to build these models. But the thing is through all of that, there's a way to find the differentiator of your business. And the differentiator is really kind of the X factor, the thing that sets you apart. Differentiators can be the brand story. It can be the founder's story. It could be something unique in the product or service, something that's innovative. Even the way in which you do the product or service. It could be kind of the experience that you give your customers. So there's a lot of different ways that we can look for ways to differentiate. And that's like super important for looking at the audience and looking at your competitors. And that's kind of where you find your positioning. So once kind of the brand substance, the foundational pieces of the foundation of the purpose, the vision, the mission, the values have been defined, and then we see like where the positioning of the brand can sit, then it's really about moving into kind of the expression of the brand, right? And when we take kind of the foundational purpose, vision, mission, and values, and we think about expressing it into the world, I think a lot of big companies, corporate companies, they have kind of these really big, boring mission statements or vision statements, or, you might get together with your colleagues and put something together and then put it on the website and, hey, that's our mission statement. That's what we believe. But there's a better way to do this. There's a more powerful way to do this. And so I did another podcast about archetypes, and you can listen to that. But the brand persona is kind of the personality and the voice in which you want to express yourself in the world. And so you really want to look at the collective personality of your brand as if it was a person, and say, like, we want to communicate our vision, we want to communicate our mission, we want to communicate our values and our purpose and who we are, and all of our marketing and advertising and messaging. We want to communicate it through a personality and voice, as if our brand and our business, was a real person, right? So you could be a startup, you could have a founder, you could have a company that has 30 employees or 300 employees, but there's a collective tone to what you're doing, and that can be communicated through the personality of the brand. And so it serves as a filter to say all of the substance that we believe of who we are, the positioning of where we sit and what makes us different, and who our audience is. We want to communicate that through our personality to them and differentiate ourselves from our competitors. So that's kind of the first step in the brand expression, is that persona, and coming up with the next things I'll talk on is the communication and the visual expression. So moving into the next piece is the communication part of the expression and developing the brand strategy. So within communication, we have the core message framework. And really what that is it's taking all of the substance that we've built as the foundation of the brand and looking at the positioning strategy with the audience, the competitors, and the differentiator. And it's coming up with core messages to communicate the brand. And we do this through a variety of ways, but it's mostly how do we express through copy, through messaging into the world, filtered through the brand persona, and appropriately kind of come up with creative ways to communicate that, right? So when we think of like brand taglines, we think of like kind of unique copywriting, advertising copy, things that really kind of catch people's attention. That's kind of where the core messaging is built from, right? So we want to be clear, we want to be concise, it needs to be unique, it needs to be relevant, and how do we infuse emotion and consistency into that messaging approach? And then we kind of target that messaging, it's focused on the product or service, and then we use differentiation, we educate, we reinforce, and we come up with really unique ways to communicate the brand and consistently put that out there through different ways. So that's kind of the core message approach. The next thing within the communication is the storytelling framework. And, brand storytelling is it's been a buzzword in the last few years. A lot of people are focused on that, but it's really, there's a framework to do this, and it's not just kind of getting out there and telling your brand purpose and your vision and, speaking on panels and, making content, all that. There's really a more strategic way to do this. And so the framework that we build really takes on kind of the hero journey. So the hero's journey is kind of a framework in which all stories are kind of told in narrative, literary, in film and TV, right? So you would have kind of this story that starts with the existing world. The hero approaches an obstacle or a challenge. There's a call to action. They meet a guide or a mentor that kind of guides them through. There's a list of challenges, and then they work through the challenges. There's a transformation. They return home. There's a new world, right? And so within this brand story framework, what we want to do is consider our customers, right? We could build a brand story framework for our own brand and what we are as a company, but what we want to do is look at each piece of where our customer is in their journey, in their hero journey, right? So we look at their existing world, the obstacles that they need to overcome, the fears, the hopes that they have. What is their call to action to engage with our business? What happens when they learn about us as the guide? What are their challenges, and how can we help transform their world? And so we map all of this out. We create a story for our customers, and then from that story, we build messaging, we build copy, we design to that. Instead of designing to what we think as a brand, would be really cool or on trend to put out into the world, we really put our customers first, and we consider their journey. And so that's a really kind of powerful way to invert the way you think about brand and storytelling into the world. Is really putting them at the front, at the forefront of the storytelling, and it puts them kind of in the main character of their lives and how our brand can help transform them and their journey. So the last piece here is kind of the name, the tagline, and the hooks. It's kind of all of the little pieces that we want to look at that help the brand kind of stick in people's minds. It's very unique. It's very clever. When we think about hooks and proposals and taglines, there's a lot of ways that we can kind of do this, but it's really about understand your brand, what the essence of the brand is. You want to keep these things very concise, highlight your value propositions, be very unique, be authentic to, your brand and the persona you're taking on. Try to make it versatile, right? So play with different things, and make it simple and clear and memorable, and try to play with the emotional appeal. So some really good examples of this is Apple, think different. Nike, just do it. McDonald's, I'm loving it. Coca-Cola, it's open happiness, right? So these are ways in which we can play with the creativity and the emotional part of the brand and be authentic through that, again, through that brand persona and through the archetype of the brand. And so there's ways in which we kind of take this on and do this, but it's really about being clear, concise, catchy, and clever. And then for hooks, right? A hook is something that is a memorable message that captures the essence, right? And so it's really kind of the same approach here with different hooks. So Disneyland is the happiest place on earth, or M&M is melts in your mouth, not in your hand. There's really kind of this emotional, kind of creative, memorable messaging and hook that's tied to the brand. But it really is trying to be authentic and differentiate yourself from your competitors, and then really think about your audience when you're doing this. And, kind of from there, we also develop things internally that can be used, and, things that can be done when you're pitching your company, when you're pitching your brand. You really want to kind of like write this stuff out, and, think about like, my name's Jordan, I'm the founder of Neon Wilderness, and, I help business leaders and founders and companies to achieve beautiful design and impactful brand strategy without the fear of high budgets through creative agencies or long lead times and lots of delays. And we're different to, other studios and creative agencies because we take a very data-driven approach to design thinking and brand strategy. So I just kind of came up with that off the top of my head, but that's really kind of, the pitch template that we develop for brands as well. So, this is all kind of in the communication and the messaging side of the work that's done within brand strategy. And then kind of the last piece is the visual expression, right? And so a lot of people think that this is kind of where you start and you get these things done and you make it look beautiful and sexy and, all of these things that attract people, and that's your brand. But that's kind of the last piece. So we have all of this stuff that leads up to this, and then we really want to build alignment to the brand identity, the brand presence, the look and feel of everything from, film, TV, broadcast, radio, communication efforts, messaging, copy, advertising, marketing, the web, the experience that the customer has when they step into a physical store, what's their checkout experience like online, right? So all of these things are kind of tied to the visual expression, and there's ways in which we lean back towards that brand personality, that brand persona, and we build from that. So, my company, about a few years ago, so I've utilized a lot of data that I've collected and captured and built and saved over time, and built this really big database that's kind of an internal system that we have. And I partnered with some people that I've worked with for a very long time. One is, at McKinsey. Another is a VC startup. Another person is a programmer for SpaceX. And so I've worked with people to develop this system, and the goal is to get to that creative direction, get to that art direction, get to those design decisions, creative decisions quickly. And the reason is because, over the 15 plus years I've done design work, whether I'm working, at a Fortune 100 company or, doing stuff with Disney or Apple or, REI, it's kind of the wheel of churn that happens where we're trying to solve the same problems from a design and creative direction and art direction perspective, just remixed in different ways. And I thought there has to be a faster, more efficient way to do this, right? So a lot of times, these things churn and they work or they don't work, or we test it or we prototype it and we're not sure. And then a lot of times these big companies will go hire studios or agencies, and they'll come in with their own point of view. But they don't really take the time to really evaluate kind of that positioning and the audience and the competitors and the differentiator, and they don't really lean into the personality of the brand and how that can be used. So the work that I do now is like looking at all of this design, creative, psychological data that I've put together, looking at color palettes and typography and, historical figures and authors and musicians, celebrities that represent these kind of personalities. And then those things kind of build this really intense mood board to say, oh, wow, here's 4,000 data points that we have looking at how we can make better decisions. And let's narrow that down, and if we're going to build a brand that needs to be, a heroic personality that operates in kind of a service space, like we can do that, right? And we look at the competitors and kind of lean into that, or we can design for a financial company that kind of wants to be the creator sage personality, or it spans across any type of industry, because we're always looking back to align to all of the work that we did leading up to this. And so this becomes kind of not really the easy part, but it becomes a very objective when you're looking back at all of the things that you've built together. Because the other challenge I've had over the years is highlighting the importance of design to leadership, right? That are very business minded, and they want to see numbers and results. And so if you can do all of this work leading up to the visual expression, it makes it less subjective, because we're always looking back to the alignment of the work that we've done in the past. So the final kind of piece in the strategy is really the brand identity and how we, present everything creatively into the world, right? And so the really beautiful thing about that is it serves as a roadmap. So as times change, teams change, people change, creative changes, the tactics change over time, where, podcasts are a really important way to get the word out. Online advertising versus, 50 years ago, it was TV and radio. That the through line of the strategy, the personality of the archetype can always shine through the visual and the communication. So, this is, there's work, the work that leads into that, but it helps people that are working on your brand, working in your business, or even third-party people. Everyone is aligned and understands, like, okay, this is who we truly are. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel here, or try to be like X, Y, and Z company over there. Like, this is exactly who we are, and we can feel confident moving forward, in 6 months, 6 years, down the line. So that's kind of a broad overview of, brand strategy and the approach that kind of goes beyond the identity and the colors and the logos and the expression. Is actually the last piece, right? So when I take on projects, big or small, I always kind of go through and look at this type of work and look at this type of discovery process and go through that with my clients, because, my perspective is every dollar spent for me to be engaged, every dollar spent for me to be involved, I want to be successful, and I want my clients to be successful. And it would be a disservice to my work, and it would be a disservice to them if I didn't take the responsibility to do kind of this surgical approach to where they are, where they want to go, and how do we kind of build a roadmap to get there. So hopefully this was helpful, and you can utilize some of this stuff for your own projects, businesses, brands, ideas. And, I'm always available if you'd like to reach out and chat about some of this stuff. So yeah, thanks for listening, and we will wrap this one up right here. Thanks for listening. You can check out jordanwlee.com for more information and additional podcast episodes. Feel free to contact me via email at jordan@jordanwlee.com.